Government, Unit 4, pages 4 through 5. We're skipping page 3 because I make you guys write and think enough in class. I just want you guys to passively observe while watching a video. Taking notes. That's mostly passive. So, federalism. Federalists and anti-federalists, you might recall, were fighting over how much control the federal government should have and how much power the state should have. Well, now we're going to get back into that argument a little bit because it never really went away. It's gone in many different directions, but it's still here. So federalism it's a division of power between the federal and state government, the national and the state governments, deciding who gets what authorities. And there's two kinds. You've got an example here on the screen. You got the marble cake federalism, which is based on a pragmatic mixing of authority and programs among national, state, and local governments. They're all interweaved with each other to like one big giant conglomerate mess. Or maybe not so mess. Maybe it's working great because everyone's so in tune with each other. That's your opinion. Then there's layer cake federalism. Very strict delineation of authority, very clear and strict programs among levels of government. So it's very clear and there's very hard separations between what each piece of government, state, local, national, can do. And it's very rigid and not much overlap. That can be very good to make sure that there's no double dipping of duties, nobody unnecessarily overlapping, but it also means it's very difficult from people from one branch to aid someone from another branch because there's such strict barriers in between. So what's the compromise? We don't have a great answer for that, but that's what we've been trying to figure out for the past 200 years, and we'll probably be trying to figure out for the next 200 years. And the amendment that gives us the freedom to be able to figure that out is the 10th Amendment. All powers not given to the national government or denied the states, meaning you have the power, the people. You have all those powers. So if the federal government doesn't have that power as per the Constitution, and the power to do something hasn't been specifically given to the states, you, the people, are supposed to be able to vote and decide yourself how any of those powers should be managed, what rights maybe also need to be added on. So as times change and things that didn't exist in the past develop in the future, we have the power as individuals to determine how to govern ourselves in these new things. Now we can give that power away to the legislature and the executive branch, but we still retain that power if the Constitution doesn't specifically say it's for states or national government. And there are powers that fall under that umbrella. So back to the power of the states versus the federal government. Here are powers that the states do and the federal government stays the heck out of. They got no business in any of these things. First, setting up local government. Are we going to have mayors or council members, or how are we going to organize our cities, our counties, our states? Do we have a governor? Do we have a peacock? Whatever. The states set it up, and the federal government cannot tell us or force us to go a different way. So if one day we decide we want to start voting for barnyard animals for governor, and our state constitution allows it, then president will just have to deal with it, talking to barnyard animals, because we have the power as a state to decide how to set up our government. We set up our own public school systems. Now, there are exceptions to this to some degree when it comes to trying to get funding from the federal government, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what kind of school systems? Do we allow charter schools like Options for Youth? Does the state not allow charters like Options for Youth? What kind of adult school programs are out there? What are the grade requirements, or what are the grade requirements for graduation? The credit requirements, 2 years of math, 3 years of math. The states get to decide how those things get determined. The federal government cannot make those decisions. Health and safety issues like traffic. Okay, speed limits in California can be very different from speed limits in other states. Not significantly, it's going to be pretty close, but they could be different. I mean, California can start saying you can drive 75, 80 miles per hour in certain zones, but if Nevada says you got to top out of 50, then you better watch out when you cross state lines, because each state comes up with their own health, safety, laws, codes, all that kind of thing. Oversee business. Federal government only gets involved with business if it's kind of business that goes through state lines. So it's going back and forth across the country, because then it's a bigger nationwide corporation. But like just a restaurant that you own or a business where you sell things, products, if it's just within your state, the state will tell you what the rules are and the regulations, and the federal government's got to stay the heck out of it. And finally, conduct elections. Even elections for president. How we do those elections, how you vote, what the ballot looks like. Can you vote by mail? Is it going to be an electronic vote? Each state funds and organizes those things completely on their own. So, powers shared with the federal government. These are powers that the state has, but the federal government also has. So, for example, collecting taxes. The state collects taxes. They pull them out of your paycheck every paycheck. They charge sales taxes. That's state taxes, not federal. And lots of other little taxes here and there. The federal government also collects taxes as per the 16th Amendment from your income. They both can do that to you. Sorry. Provide public assistance. Both the state and the federal government can offer public assistance. Now, when the federal government provides public assistance, it might often go through the state, and the state, to be able to get that money to you, might have to agree to certain strings, to certain rules and requirements. But they don't have to, but if they want that money, they're going to have to play along. But it's not just the local state that will offer you things, the federal government will also. Like food stamps, that's generally a federal assistance. But a lot of things like the WIC program, help young mothers, poor underprivileged mothers, and fathers, for families, not just mothers, to pay for baby-related things like formula. That's a local, non-federal assistance. Setting up courts. States set up local courts, city courts, state courts, and the federal government sets up federal court, Supreme Court. So that's pretty clear. Both can borrow money from each other. The federal government sometimes does borrow money from a wealthier state like California, taxpayer money, to give it to another state that's struggling. That happens all the time. And then the federal government can borrow money from other countries. In the states, they can borrow money from each other. Both states and federal governments can add to their own debt. And finally, they both can enforce laws. Because, you can be in violation of a state, city, local law. You can be in violation of a federal law. And you can be in violation of both at the same time. So they both can enforce laws, and that can affect you depending on if you're violating any laws or accused of violating any laws, even if you're not. State constitutions. As of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, states have to come up with their own constitution before they become a state. Now they can change it afterwards, and just like America can change, or Congress can change the United States Constitution, but the states can change their own and amend it in many different ways, just like the United States government can. It's similar to the U.S. Constitution in form. There's similar idea and purpose, but they're much more detailed and extremely larger. I don't mean to pick on Utah. This is just a graphic I found. It's not just Utah, it's all the states. Because there's a lot more things they got to figure out. They do have Supreme Courts to help clarify things, but because laws don't affect as many people as federal laws, they make a lot more to clarify things to try to limit the Supreme Court's power, the state Supreme Court's power in those states, and many other reasons too. It's just a lot more easier to get laws and add to the law, get laws proposed, because you as a citizen have a lot more influence to make state laws and get state laws voted on and passed than you ever will in the federal government, where you have almost no influence. And finally, there's something called the Constitutional Initiative. This is the state amendment process. They may not call it an amendment to the Constitution. They'll call it a constitutional initiative, except like I was saying earlier, you, the people, get, as citizens, propose constitutional amendments. Now, it might start in the not the federal government, in the state legislature, or the governor, or a mayor, but it doesn't have to. It can start with you, and you can force the state to vote on constitutional initiatives, which again are the same things as amendments, only for state constitutions instead of the federal constitution. The national constitution, the U.S. Constitution, that's changes to there are called amendments. So arguments between having a stronger state government or a stronger federal government. Arguments for greater states' rights. States tend to know your needs better because they're closer to you. The leaders live in your state. Citizens feel more connected to local leaders because it's easier for them to see them and interact with them. Not easy, just saying. You have a much higher chance of seeing your mayor. I mean, I've seen the mayor of Fontana. I've seen her a few times. In the same building as me. Small building, same school, same boardroom. I've never been anywhere near the President of the United States, and I may never be. But the mayor, not so hard to reach. So it's therefore the mayor will be more in touch with me, even if she doesn't agree with me, even if she doesn't like me. She's going to at least know she's got a higher chance of knowing how I feel as a citizen of her city, because I am a Fontana resident. Prevents federal government from getting distracted from bigger national concerns. So, if we're dealing with terrorists abroad and foreign treaties and major trade agreements with other countries, those are big deals. A lot of federal laws, too, are really big deals trying to maintain those. Border Patrol, dealing with those big crises. If the government's getting distracted by, should we have 2 years of math or 3 years of math, maybe they may not be able to fulfill their requirements to maintain those really much bigger jobs. So that's another argument to letting states have a lot more independence to control their own affairs. And finally, states can experiment with new programs without affecting the rest of the country. They can pilot new things, try things out that will only affect maybe their state or just one city or one county. They have a freedom to try to explore new ideas, but minimize the impact if those ideas turn out to be bad. Now, arguments for a strong national government. If a stronger national government can maintain equal opportunity for all citizens no matter where they live. This is why a lot of anti-federalists were from the South. They were afraid that the government would eliminate slavery over the whole country to maintain equal opportunity. And after slavery was out, even then, the government was kind of a little bit hands-off with a lot of the lawmaking, and as a result, the South had all kinds of laws segregating whites and having laws like it's illegal for whites and blacks to marry each other. It's illegal for them to have certain relations with each other. I mean, there are all kinds of crazy segregationist, racist laws can be passed in one state and not another. Well, if you have a strong enough national government, they can make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. They can and enforce it too. Because even when the national government did step in the South, they weren't really they were going to try to ignore us until we set the military down there to force them to let black students into their schools. For real, we had to send the military down there to force the school doors open to let black students in, even though the laws had changed to end segregation. And finally, there are many problems that are just too big or too expensive for a state budget to handle. The water crisis right now that's affecting not just Southern California, but all the states in the vicinity is one of those ones where if it gets too big and a proper compromise and deal can't be worked out, the national government might have to step in and tell us what the rules are. I don't know if I want that to happen, but it's a possibility. It's a dire enough situation. It's affecting enough people. The federal government might have to come in and play the mommy card if we can't come up with our own resolution for it. And that's it. Don't forget the Edmodo quiz immediately. This is part of the homework. Go to Unit 4, page 6, and I'll see you in class.